The massive space station called Harmony's edge floated quietly in the void between star systems. Inside its giant council chamber, hundreds of alien beings sat in their special seats, talking about the usual boring stuff that kept the galaxy running smoothly. Trade agreements, shipping routes, who could mine what asteroids, the kind of meetings that made even the most patient creatures want to take a nap. Ambassador Velthar from the Nexian Republic was having one of those days. His blue crystalline skin flickered with boredom as he scrolled through his data pad, barely paying attention to the droning voices round him. Item after item got discussed, voted on, and filed away. Mining rights for the Outer Rim, approved. New trade taxes on synthetic materials, approved. Territorial disputes between the Kree and the Bolians, postponed for a further study. Then came item 47, territorial reassignment of human colonial systems 7, 8, and 9, announced the Council's computer voice in its annoyingly cheerful tone. Velthar perked up slightly. Now this was interesting. Those 3 human systems sat right in the middle of some very valuable hyperspace routes, the kind of routes that could make a species rich if they control the toll stations. And humans, well, they were nice enough, but they just used those systems for farming and research stations, such a waste of prime real estate. The Nexian Republic moves for immediate evacuation of human populations from the designated systems, Velthar said, not even bothering to look up from his notes. These worlds would serve the greater galactic community better under proper administrative oversight. Round the chamber, alien heads nodded in agreement. A few tentacles waved supportively. Someone made a clicking sound that meant approval. In their language, humans were easy to deal with. They always negotiated, always compromised, always found peaceful solutions. They'd probably ask for a few years to relocate and maybe some help with moving costs. But they'd comply. They always did. In the back corner of the chamber, an ancient creature called Murtic shifted uncomfortably in his floating meditation pod. His wrinkled skin was so old it looked like leather, and his 6 eyes had seen more galactic history than most species had recorded. Those eyes were now focused on a sealed section of the archives, where certain files about human military capabilities were locked away. Files that most of the current council thought were either fake or wildly exaggerated. Murtic remembered the human covenant wars from 40 years ago. He remembered the reports that came back from those battles, reports that made seasoned military commanders wake up in cold sweats. But that was a long time ago, and the humans who fought those wars were either dead or retired. The humans everyone knew now were explorers and scientists, traders and diplomats. They built beautiful cities and grew amazing food. They wrote poetry and made art. They were probably the most peaceful species in the galaxy. The motion is seconded by the Vrexian Empire, called out another voice from across the chamber, and the Elterian Collective added someone else. The vote was quick and decisive. 847 in favor, 3 against, 12 abstentions. The computer dutifully recorded the decision and began preparing the official notification that would be sent to human space within the next few days. Next item. The computer announced cheerfully as the council moved on to discussing space whale migration patterns. Velthar allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The Nexians would control those hyperspace routes within a year, and the profits would be enormous. The humans would probably even thank them for finding them new homes that were better suited to their peaceful nature. What Velthar didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the message they were about to send would trigger protocols that had been quietly waiting for exactly this kind of situation. Deep in human space, certain military officers were about to receive coded communications that would make them remember training exercises from their youth. Supply officers would start moving equipment for reasons they wouldn't fully understand until later. Intelligence analysts would begin updating files that hadn't been touched in decades. The galaxy had gotten comfortable with peaceful humans. They'd forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that choose not to hunt. As the council session continued with its usual boring efficiency, Murdoch finally closed his ancient eyes and settled deeper into his meditation. Odd. He'd tried to warn them once, years ago, but nobody had listened. The younger species thought the old warnings were just stories told by paranoid elders. Soon, they would learn that some stories were actually memories, and some sleeping giants were better left undisturbed. The message drones launched from Harmonies edged 3 hours later, carrying the Council's decree toward human space at faster-than-light speeds. The galaxy continued its peaceful routine, completely unaware that they had just made a very serious mistake. Admiral Park Jimin stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Force flagship Serenity, watching the stars slowly drift past the massive viewport. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. The encrypted message on his personal terminal had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he'd been staring at it ever since, knowing exactly what it would say before he opened it. The Galactic Council wanted humans to pack up and leave 3 entire star systems. Just like that, as if 200 million people could simply grab their belongings and find somewhere else to live. As if 30 years of building homes, schools, farms, and entire civilizations meant nothing. Captain Lihanna approached quietly, her boots making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. She'd served under Admiral Park for 8 years and could read his moods better than most people could read books. Right now, his jaw was set in that particular way that meant someone had just made a very big mistake. "Sir, the preliminary evacuation protocols are ready for your review," she said, though they both knew those protocols would never be used. Park nodded slowly, still not turning away from the stars. "Captain, do you remember your military history classes?" "Yes, sir." "What did they teach you about the difference between sheep and wolves?" Lihanna thought for a moment. "That sheep run when threatened. Wolves fight back. And the smartest predators look like sheep until someone forces them to show their teeth." "Exactly." Park finally turned round, and his expression was as cold as deep space. "Send an encrypted message to President Kim Soo. Tell him we need an emergency cabinet meeting." "And Captain?" "Yes, sir." "Activate Protocol 7. Lihanna's eyes widened slightly. Protocol 7 hadn't been used since the Human Covenant Wars ended 40 years ago. It was the code that transformed the entire human military from a peaceful exploration force into something very different. Something the galaxy had forgotten humans could become. Within 6 hours, President Kim Soo-ho sat in the secure conference room beneath the Capitol building on Earth, surrounded by his top advisors and military commanders. The holographic display showed the 3 disputed star systems: New Seoul, Bizen Station, and the agricultural world of Jeju Prime. Beautiful worlds where families had lived for generations. "Gentlemen, ladies," President Kim began, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "The Galactic Council has just made a request that we cannot and will not honor. They want us to voluntarily abandon our homes so they can build toll stations." Defense Minister Omin leaned forward. "Mr. President, our intelligence suggests they expect complete compliance within 6 months. They're treating this as a minor administrative matter, and if we refuse, they'll send enforcement ships to make us comply." President Kim was quiet for a long moment, thinking about his daughter who lived on New Seoul with her 3 children, thinking about the millions of other families who called those worlds home. thinking about the gardens and schools and community centers that represented decades of human dreams made real. Draft a diplomatic response, he said finally, polite but firm. We respectfully decline their request and ask for formal negotiations to resolve this peacefully. The response was sent 12 hours later through official diplomatic channels. It was written in perfect galactic standard, following all the proper protocols, expressing regret that humans could not comply with the Council's wishes and requesting a meeting to discuss alternative solutions. The Council's reply came back so fast it was almost insulting. Compliance is not optional. Human populations will be relocated. Enforcement action will be taken if necessary. Admiral Park read the message 3 times, each reading making him angrier. The casual arrogance was breathtaking. The Council wasn't even pretending to negotiate. They'd simply decided that human lives and human homes didn't matter. Well, he said to Captain Lee, who was standing beside him in the communication center, I suppose they've made their position clear. What are your orders, sir? Park walked over to a secured terminal and placed his hand on the biometric scanner. Computer, implement Defense Condition Alpha across all human territories. Authorization Park 779 Delta. Defense Condition Alpha confirmed. The computer replied in its emotionless voice. All human military assets are now at maximum readiness. Across human space, things began to change. Supply convoys that had been carrying farming equipment suddenly started moving different cargo. Research stations powered up sensors that hadn't been active in decades. Deep space monitoring posts went from routine patrols to full combat alert. Civilian ships received coded messages that sent them toward safer systems, disguised as routine maintenance schedules. The changes were subtle, professional, and completely invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for them. To outside observers, human space looked exactly the same as always, peaceful, busy with normal commerce, focused on exploration and trade. But beneath that peaceful surface, something else was stirring. Something that had been sleeping for 40 years, waiting patiently for the day when someone would be foolish enough to threaten human families. Captain Nam Taihan received his orders aboard the destroyer Guardian while patrolling the outer edge of the Kepler system. His ship looked like any other human vessel. Clean lines, efficient design, built more for exploration than fighting. The Council's intelligence files probably listed it as a minor patrol craft. There were about 2. Learn how wrong their intelligence files could be. The massive Council enforcement ship Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system like a metal mountain appearing from nowhere. Its dark hull stretched for 2 kilometers. Bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays that could scan entire planets in minutes. Admiral Coulson of the Vrexian Navy stood on the command bridge. His forearms crossed confidently behind his back as he watched the tactical displays light up with information about the human colony. Head, this was going to be easy. The intelligence. Reports said the humans had maybe a few patrol ships in the system, probably converted cargo haulers with basic defensive systems. Nothing that could stand up to a proper military vessel like the Dominion. The humans would take one look at his ship and start packing immediately. Sir, his tactical officer reported. We're detecting one human vessel at the edge of the system. Destroyer class, approximately 400 meters in length. Coulson S. mandibles clicked with amusement. A destroyer against a dreadnought. It was like a house cat trying to fight a tiger. Open communications with the human vessel. Let's get this over with quickly. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. The captain was a young woman with short black hair and calm dark eyes that seemed completely unimpressed by the massive warship facing her. Her uniform was simple, clean, and bore the insignia of the United Earthship Guardian, Council vessel. Captain Nam Taihan said in perfectly polite galactic standard, This is the United Earth. Ship Guardian, please state your intentions in human territorial space. Coulson straightened to his full 3-meter height, letting his natural intimidation factor work. Human vessel. I am Admiral Coulson of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division. You will stand down immediately. And prepare for inspection. Your colonists have 48 hours to begin evacuation procedures as ordered by Council Decree 7749. Captain Nam's expression didn't change at all. If anything, she looked slightly bored. I'm afraid we must respectfully decline, Admiral. These worlds are under human protection, and our people are not leaving their homes. The audacity was stunning. Coulson's tactical display showed the comparison clearly. His ship massed 15 times what the human destroyer did. His weapons could punch through asteroid belts. His shields could withstand the energy output of a small star. And this human. Captain was telling him no, as if she had any choice in the matter. Captain Nam, Coulson said, his voice growing cold. You seem to be under the mistaken impression that this is a negotiation. It is not. You have 10 seconds to comply with Council authority, or I will be forced to fire a warning shot to demonstrate the seriousness of this situation. Captain Nam leaned back in her command chair, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes, something that made Coulson, as tactical officer, unconsciously step back from his console. Admiral, she said conversationally, I should mention that in human space, we consider warning shots to be acts of war. Coulson's laugh was harsh and grating. Acts of war. You have one small ship against the most powerful enforcement vessel in the Council fleet. What exactly do you think you can do about it? I suppose we'll find out. The Admiral nodded to his weapons officer. Fire a warning shot. Low-power plasma burst. -1 meters off their starboard bow. Let's show them what real firepower looks like. The Dominion's forward plasma cannon charged with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. Energy readings spiked as the weapon prepared to fire a blast that could vaporize a small asteroid. The shot would pass harmlessly by the human ship, but the display of raw power would make the point clear enough. The plasma bolt lanced out across space. A brilliant green streak that lit up both ships' hulls. It should have passed exactly where Coulson's computers had calculated, 50 meters from the Guardian's hull. Instead, the human ship moved. It didn't accelerate gradually like ships were supposed to. It didn't turn in a wide arc or fire thrusters to adjust position. One moment it was sitting still in space, and the next moment it was somewhere else entirely, as if it had simply decided that the laws of physics were more like suggestions. The return shot came so fast that Coulson's tactical officer didn't even have time to shout a warning. A pencil-thin beam of energy, barely visible on the sensors, struck the Dominion with surgical precision. Not the bridge, not the engines, not anywhere that would hurt the crew, the weapons. When the energy dissipated and the damage reports started flooding in, Coulson stared at his tactical displays in complete shock. Every single weapon system on his ship had been disabled. Not destroyed. Not blown up in spectacular explosions. Disabled. The targeting systems were intact. The power conduits were fine. But somehow the actual firing mechanisms had been burned out with impossible precision. It was like someone had performed surgery on his ship from the outside, reaching in to remove exactly what they wanted to remove and nothing else. That was our warning shot, Admiral. Captain Nam's voice came through the communication system, still perfectly polite and calm. Perhaps the Council would like to reconsider their position. We're always happy to discuss this matter through proper diplomatic channels. Coulson's forearms trembled as he stared at the human captain on his screen. Behind her, he could see a crew working at their stations with quiet efficiency, as if disabling the most powerful ship in the Council fleet was just another day at the office. How? He whispered. Captain Nam smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't entirely friendly. Admiral, humans have been very busy these past 40 years. We've learned some interesting things. The Council task force arrived at New Pacifica colony like an angry storm made of metal and fire. 12 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and shield generators. Two dreadnoughts led the group, each one big enough to hold a small city and powerful enough to crack a moon in half. Admiral Kethma commanded the fleet from the Bridge of the Vengeance, his reptilian eyes burning with fury. The humiliation of Admiral Coulson had spread through Council space like wildfire, and the military leadership was not pleased. One human destroyer had embarrassed their finest enforcement vessel, making the entire Council look weak and foolish. That would not happen again, sir, his communications officer reported. We're detecting the human defense fleet. 7 ships total, led by what appears to be their flagship. Kethma studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 7 human ships against 12 Council vessels. The humans had courage. He'd give them that, but courage wouldn't save them from overwhelming firepower. His fleet carried enough weapons to glass an entire planet. Open a channel to the human flagship, he ordered. The main screen showed the bridge of the human vessel, and Kethma felt his confidence waver slightly. The ship looked wrong somehow, too clean, too advanced, like it had been built by beings who understood technology better than they should. The captain was an older human male with graying hair and calm eyes that seemed to look right through the screen. Council fleet, Admiral Park Jimin said quietly. This is the United Earthship Harmony. You are in violation of human territorial space. Please withdraw immediately. Kethma's forked tongue flaked out in amusement. Human Admiral, I am Kethma of the Council Defense Force. You are outnumbered almost 2 to 1. Your colony will be evacuated, and your ships will surrender. This is your only warning. Admiral Park leaned forward slightly in his command chair. Admiral Kethma, I'm going to make you an offer. Turn your ships round and leave. Go back to the Council and tell them that humans are not interested in relocating. We want to live in peace, but we will defend our homes, and if we refuse, then we'll have to remind the galaxy why humans spent the last 40 years being so quiet. Kethma's laugh was harsh and cold. Remind us, human. You have 7 ships. We have 12. Including 2 dreadnoughts that could destroy your entire fleet before you could fire a single shot. Admiral Park's expression didn't change. Admiral, those reports about human military capabilities from the old wars, the ones your archives said were exaggerated, they weren't. The human fleet began to move, and immediately Kethma knew something was terribly wrong. Ships weren't supposed to accelerate like that. Physics had rules about mass and energy and momentum, but the human vessels seemed to ignore those rules completely. They moved like fighters but looked like cruisers, turning and diving through space in ways that should have torn them apart. All ships, open fire. Kethma shouted. The Council fleet unleashed everything they had: plasma cannons, particle beams, fusion missiles, gravity bombs, enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The space between the 2 groups lit up like a miniature star as energy weapons traced brilliant lines across the darkness. None of it touched the human ships. They moved through the storm of weapons fire like dancers, each vessel following paths that seemed impossible to calculate. One human destroyer actually flew through the middle of a plasma bridge, emerging completely unharmed on the other side. Then the humans fired back. The weapons that lanced out from the human ships didn't look like anything in Kethma's databases. Beams of energy that bent space around them, seeking their targets with intelligent precision. Projectiles that seemed to exist in several places at once before choosing which reality to strike from. The engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds. When it was over, every single council ship hung dead in space. Not destroyed, not blown apart in spectacular explosions. Disabled. Their engines were offline. Their weapons were dead. Their shields were down. The crews were alive and unharmed. But their ships were as helpless as newborns. Admiral Kethmer stared at his tactical displays in complete shock. His dreadnought, the most powerful warship the Council had ever built, had been defeated by a human vessel that should have been destroyed by his first salvo. His entire task force had been neutralized, without a single human ship showing even minor damage. Council vessels. Admiral Park's voice came through the communication system, still perfectly calm and professional. Your crews will be treated with full dignity and repatriated immediately. Medical assistance is available if needed, please. Inform your leadership that humanity has no desire for conquest or expansion. We simply want to live in peace in our own space. Captain Omen-Yung, monitoring the battle from the destroyer Defiance, smiled grimly as she watched the tactical readings. 40 years of quiet research and development had produced results that most species would consider impossible, while the galaxy thought humans were playing farmer. They'd actually been revolutionizing everything they understood about physics, engineering, and warfare. Sir, her tactical officer reported. All council vessels are secured. No casualties on either side. Captain O nodded. Send the data recordings to Earth Command. Make sure they include the full technical specifications we just demonstrated. I think it's time the galaxy understood what humans have really been doing all these years. The stars round New Pacifica seemed brighter somehow, as if the universe itself was celebrating the fact that sometimes the quiet ones were the most dangerous of all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. The great chamber of harmony's edge, which had echoed with confident voices just weeks before, now hummed with nervous whispers and fearful speculation. Representatives from dozens of species huddled in their seats, their various forms of eyes all focused on the massive holographic displays showing the aftermath of the New Pacifica incident. Ambassador Velthar, who had so casually proposed the human relocations, now sat slumped in his crystalline chair, his blue skin flickering with stress patterns. The recordings from Admiral Kethmer's fleet played over and over on the screens, human ships moving in ways that defy physics, weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. And 12 of the Council's finest warships disabled in less than 8 minutes without a single casualty. The technical analysis is complete, announced Chief Science Advisor Rentok, his voice shaking slightly as he read from his data pad. The human vessels demonstrate propulsion systems that exceed our theoretical maximums by factors we cannot calculate. Their defensive capabilities appear to manipulate local space-time fields, their weapons. He paused, looking round the chamber with wide eyes. Their weapons operate on principles we don't even have names for. A tremor of fear rippled through the assembly. The Nexian Republic, which had expected to profit from controlling human hyperspace routes, was now calculating how much it would cost to apologize. The Vrexian Empire, whose military pride had been shattered along with their enforcement fleets, sat in stunned silence. The question before us, said Council Chairman Zerval, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber, is simple. What do we do now? The answer came from the chamber's main entrance. The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss, and 2 humans walked in. Not prisoners being escorted by guards. Not supplicants begging for mercy. They walked in as equals, their footsteps echoing confidently across the polished floor. Admiral Park Jimin wore his dress uniform with quiet dignity, the various medals and ribbons telling the story of a long military career. Beside him, President Kim Suho looked exactly like what he was. A leader who had been pushed to far end was now here to make sure it never happened again. The chamber fell completely silent as the two humans approached the central speaking platform. Every eye, tentacle, and sensory organ in the room focused on them with an intensity that could have powered a small star. President Kim stepped forward and spoke in clear, simple galactic standard. Honored representatives, we come here not as conquerors or as enemies, but as neighbors who have been forced to defend our homes. The human territories will remain under human control. We seek no expansion, no conquest, no dominion over others. We ask only to be left in peace to live as we choose. His words were polite, respectful even, but underneath them was something harder than diamond. The absolute certainty of a species that had just proven they could back up their words with actions. The motion to rescind Council Decree 7749 is now before the Assembly, Chairman Zerval announced. Though everyone knew the outcome was inevitable, the vote was unanimous. 862 votes to rescind the human relocation order, 0 votes against, no abstentions. As the voting concluded, Admiral Park stepped forward. We want to be clear about something. For 40 years, humanity has chosen peace. We built gardens instead of warships, schools instead of military bases, art galleries instead of weapons factories. This was not because we couldn't build those other things. It was because we didn't want to. He paused, letting his words sink in. The galaxy forgot that choice and necessity are different things. You forgot that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who choose not to hunt. Round the chamber, alien beings shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The implications were staggering. If humans had been capable of this level of military technology all along, what else had they been capable of? What other sleeping giants existed in the galaxy, quietly building impossible weapons while pretending to be harmless? As the human delegation prepared to leave, ancient archivist Murtic approached them privately. His 6 eyes held a mixture of regret and respect as he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. The archives remembered. He said quietly, "Some of us never forgot what your species accomplished in the old wars, but the young ones, they thought those stories were exaggerations. They thought you had become weak." Admiral Park nodded solemnly. "We never became weak, Elder. We became patient. There's a difference. And now," President Kim answered this time, "now the galaxy knows that humans prefer peace, but we're fully capable of war. We hope that knowledge will help everyone make better choices in the future." As the human ships departed from Harmony's edge, representatives throughout the chamber began making urgent communications to their home governments. Trade agreements needed to be reviewed, military assessments required updating, diplomatic protocols demanded revision. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the quietest neighbors were the ones you really didn't want to wake up. And sometimes, when you pushed a peaceful people too far, you discovered that their peace had been a gift they'd been giving you all along. In his private chambers, Murtic sealed away the battle recordings in the deepest parts of the archives. Alongside the old reports from the Human Covenant Wars, future generations would need to remember both sets of records. The galaxy was a much more interesting place when humans were your friends instead of your enemies.